So I graduated just over a year ago, and despite working a really interesting job in edtech, reading books in my free time, and just how much I love learning, I've realized just how easy it is to not get rich intellectual stimulation in adulthood. My growth in university felt like this, because every single day I was reading so much, toying with new ideas, having debates with friends, exploring new cultures. But as you find a routine in adulthood, the days just get taken over by the drudgery of adulthood, the priorities of needing to make money, adulting, keeping the house clean, keeping yourself alive, keeping your relationships alive. You don't have the accountability of an end of chapter test. You don't have the motivation of all your friends learning with you. And when you get to the end of a long day at work, are you going to pick up a scientific research paper, or are you going to pick up your phone and scroll through social media? But learning is so important, so enriching, it makes life worth living. So today I'm going to be ranking adult learning techniques to inspire you to keep learning. And guys, the beauty of learning outside of formal education is that there's no rigidity. You can learn anything. You can learn socio-emotional skills. You can learn about the state of the world, government, politics, resistance. You can learn about yourself and spirituality and introspect. I studied a degree in cognitive science with a specialism in learning theory, so I'm very passionate about what makes a learning technique actually good in terms of retention and efficacy based on the science of learning. But I'm also going to rank the techniques today based on enjoyment, fun, ease of access, and as you'll see, so many of them depend on how you do them, how you engage with it. So this is just my opinion, and I really hope it inspires you to get out and learn more. Oh my god, I can see the neighbour's cat in the garden. So cute. Hi. I'm filming, sorry. Okay, here we have the ranking. Okay, so the bottom tier is better than nothing, because it's still amazing that you're learning something. Even if you're not going to remember it in 2 days, that's fine, you're still learning. And then we ascend the hierarchy to something I'm calling brain nibbles, which is where, a little bite size of information. Oh, I could do something with that. Oh, maybe this is going to change how I think for like a week. I'm curious, I'm interested, maybe it's not got that much depth. And then we have, okay, she learning. She toying with ideas. She putting things in the long-term memory. And then guys, we're getting into the real deal stuff. Change my brain chemistry. This is like, this is really going to affect how you see the world. You know, when you read a life-changing book and you're like, oh my God, everything is different. Like my toolkit, my mental model of seeing the world has changed. And then finally, my personal god tier is casual magic, which is where learning is so effective, so brilliant that it feels like magic, which is inspired by my podcast, Finding Your Casual Magic. So if you're interested in my deep dive rambly thoughts and learning from me, then you should go check that out on Spotify, YouTube, all the platforms. Okay, so first we have following accounts on social media. And where I say follow accounts, I mean you are intentionally curating your feed around people you want to learn from. And I think it's really hard to place this one, because I know that I have learned so much from so many incredible influencers, creators. I've learned so much about politics, about social issues, about anti-racism, about climate, about mental health, about body image. But it requires intentionality. And how often do we actually ask ourselves if the people we're following make our lives better or not? I wish we did that more, but it's probably like once every 2 years when you're prompted to think about it. So I'm going to put this in brain nibbles, because in the mess of social media content, you are getting these little nibbles, bite-sized info that's changing the way that you think for the better. But it's random, inconsistent. You might forget it in 2 days. You might not engage with it that critically when you see it. Mindfulness, journaling, and reflecting. Do you know what? This is actually going to go straight up there in change my brain chemistry, because so much of what makes learning happen is actually taking a step back and being able to introspect on what's just happened. Imagine you listen to an incredible podcast on your bike ride. You're biking around and looking at everything, and like in your ears there's something playing. You could easily forget that information in 5 days. But if after that bike ride you go home, you get out a journal and you ask yourself what you've learned, you do some active recall, you do some spaced repetition, that kind of, to me, falls under mindfulness, you know, introspecting about what you're learning and reflecting on the information that you're taking in. That is starting to change your brain chemistry. There's so much research to show that meditation, getting enough sleep, resting, all of these things are essential to putting things in our long-term memory. So mindfulness is good for adult learning. We love her. Work an intellectually stimulating job. I'm going to put this straight up in casual magic, because Isn't that the dream? Isn't that the dream if your job is providing you the means to learn so much about the world, especially if your job is something you're interested in? I guess if you're in a job you hate, like some random marketing role or finance role or corporate job that you despise, then maybe you're not that inspired by the things that you're learning. But the dream is to be day to day doing a job that, you know, is intellectually stimulating, to be around people who help challenge your views, and you get to make money from it. Ooh, fact check and be curious. Okay, to me, this is an extension of follow accounts on social media, because it's one thing to read and engage with content, but it is another to then take a step back and think, maybe I should do some more research about that. Maybe I should fact check what they've said. Maybe I should go read the news around it. Maybe I should look at alternative perspectives. Maybe I should be curious, read a scientific paper about what they've said. To me, this takes a brain nibble to a okay, she learning. That has real potential to help you learn. Okay, watching TV shows. I feel like this is so hard because it's such an it depends. Like, girl, what are we watching? Am I watching Big Brother and Selling Sunset with my mum? Or am I watching Planet Earth, an interesting documentary series? I'm going to make the wide assumption here that we're mainly watching TV shows purely for entertainment and relaxation. So I am going to say better than nothing, because I feel like if you're not coming there intentionally trying to learn, or you're not selecting things for intellectual engagement, then I don't know, how much are you learning from like Gilmore Girls? I mean, I love Gilmore Girls, but you know what I mean? Better than nothing, but also you could be reading. Okay, podcasts. This is interesting because I think a lot of people think that podcasts are like changing your brain chemistry all the time. But again, this is such an it depends. How are you listening to these podcasts? What podcasts are you consuming? And then how are you putting things in your long-term memory or not? In the science of learning literature, there's this idea of passive techniques, which is where, you know, you're rereading your notes or you're consuming information, but you're not necessarily actively thinking. You're just kind of hoping that some of it miraculously goes in. So in general, I would call podcasts a brain nibble, because you have the potential to learn, but it really depends on how you're engaging with it. And especially if you're revisiting the concepts a few days later with spaced repetition, or if you're literally just listening to it in that one moment and then never looking at it again. Staying informed, like looking at politics, what's happening in the world, and critically thinking. This is really interesting. I think, again, all of them are debatable, but I think this is stronger than like a podcast. I guess you could also get your news from podcasts. I'm going to put this in okay, she learning, because my assumption here is that we're critically thinking. We're looking at what's happening in the world, but we're also maybe looking at multiple sources. Maybe we're having conversations about it. We're not in our little echo chamber. We're really questioning what's happening and looking at it from many different lenses. And the interesting thing that I'm constantly learning about looking at the state of the world is that there's so many intersectional problems all the time. You constantly need a multilateral approach to understanding one news article. Like, okay, Trump won the election. Why is that? There is a layered answer to that question. There's so many different perspectives that you could look at it from. And if you're engaging with that question from multiple angles, then that's really cool. That's really good for learning. Especially if then you're looking at other solutions or you're comparing to other nations. Okay, she's learning. Maybe even she's changing her brain chemistry, but I put it in learning for now. Okay, newsletters. I'm going to go brain nibble. To me, this is so similar to podcasts. It's how you engage with it. I have some newsletters that have changed my brain chemistry and some newsletters that I've forgotten about 1 minute after I've read them. So are we reading it with intentionality? Are we thinking about the information again? Or are we just having a cute dopamine release of feeling like we're learning? Oh, therapy. To me, therapy is casual magic. That is some high-level learning about yourself, how you interact with people and the world around you. You're digging into the reasons that you are the way you are. You have spaced repetition because you're going to multiple sessions. You have the emotional learning piece if things deeply affect you. Like if you're crying in therapy, girl, you're learning. Very few things can transform you in the way that therapy can. It is an amazing self-learning tool. Mentorship. I am actually going to put mentorship in change my brain chemistry, because I believe that if you can find a mentor who's truly invested in you, this could be a manager, an old professor, you know, someone that you reach out to on LinkedIn, whose career that you find interesting. And if you can get them to provide you with the resources and the opportunities to grow in the ways that you want, then that is such targeted learning. It's consistent, it has accountability, and there's so much room to grow. Personal curriculum. Guys, that is going into casual magic. I was actually inspired to use this term personal curriculum by my good friend Ruby Granger. I've always been someone who self-studies, but I really love her idea of literally designing a curriculum around your interests and curiosities. So, for example, I want to learn German. I want to get better at German. And so for 6 months of this year, I did Lingoda classes, which is where I had online classes with a native speaking teacher and a small group of people from all around the world. And it was just such a targeted way to consistently learn something I was interested in. And the beauty of a personal curriculum is that you can build it. You can write a list of all the readings that you want to do. You can write a list of all the texts you want to engage with, the documentaries you want to watch. And because you're building all these resources together, your learning has a lot of foundation, and it's much more similar to formal education where you have a curriculum pre-designed and everything maps onto one another and is therefore deeper learning. You can do online courses like MOOCs, massive online open course for free. And this video is very kindly sponsored by Skillshare, which is literally one of the best learning communities that you can be part of to learn creative skills, especially for a creative career. I'm obsessed with Skillshare. I've learned so many new skills from there. They have classes on everything from productivity to creative writing. I've made a class on there about evidence-based study methods, and you can learn at your own pace from experts and mentors on these subjects. And they really try and make learning active because there's an option to do a project for a lot of classes, which is amazing, and you can share your project and get comments and feedback from peers. Guys, I recently took this class on how to make a podcast in preparation for launching my podcast, Finding Your Casual Magic, and John's advice for creating the pilot episode was so helpful for refining my mission and vision. I also really loved his points about creating a marketing plan for the launch, and it really informed how I made the Instagram page. I can't recommend Skillshare enough. If you are interested in a free trial of Skillshare, you've got to get to the link like this, because only the first 500 people who click the link in my description will get 1 month of Skillshare fully for free. So go, go, go. Big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Okay, reading fiction books. Again, really, it depends, because what are we reading? There are fiction books which have utterly transformed the way that I view the world, the way I see certain demographics of people, the way I relate to my emotions. You know, being able to go inside the head of someone who has escaped from North Korea, or an 85-year-old maths teacher who's feeling really lonely, or to read about the lived experience of a trans person. Like, fiction has the power to change your entire way of seeing the world because you are living someone else's reality. But there are also fiction books that I would call fluffy entertainment, where like you don't really learn that much, and so it really just depends what you're reading. So I'm gonna put fiction in between Okay She Learning and Change My Brain Chemistry. I always want to put it in between, like, could be a brain nibble, but could change your brain chemistry. Do you know what I mean? Like, it really depends on the book. I'm happy with that for now, though. Reading non-fiction books. Okay, again, it really depends on the book. Some books change my brain chemistry forever. I'm actually going to put it in the same place because I think you're always going to be learning. Like, okay, she's learning. She's always learning if we're doing non-fiction, but they might not change your brain chemistry. Write a blog and projects. Guys, I think this is a powerful one. Anytime that you are converting your learning into a tangible product of your own, that is such a high effort skill. You have to really understand something to then go away and do it yourself. You know, to conduct an entire research project and write an essay, or to write a blog and to have the accountability of hundreds of people reading your work, to paint a piece after watching all these classes on how to do it. So I'm going to put that in casual magic. I think that's really teaching you a lot. Like, you're doing the work. High effort, high rewards. Okay, teach people what you've learned, or tell people about what you're learning. So that's like, oh, I just listened to this podcast episode, let me come and tell my housemate about it. This is pretty great for science of learning because we're engaging our active recall, we're having to remember what we learned, and then we're also having to like translate and pitch it to someone who maybe doesn't know that content. But I don't know if it's going to change your brain chemistry. I'm going to go okay, she learning. Oh, it's so hard. It's somewhere in between okay, she learning and change my brain chemistry, but I'm going to do change my brain chemistry. If the person you're teaching is asking you questions, clarifying questions, or debating, asking further, that's really rich. That can change your brain chemistry. But if they're just passively listening to you and not challenging anything, then I'd be like, she learning. Travel and learning about new cultures. I think this, again, is such an it depends. Because girl, if you're going to Ibiza on a gal's holiday clubbing and you're not engaging with the place you're in, you're not learning any of the language, you're not learning about the culture, you're just like chilling in the hotel, living it up, no judgment, like live it up, do it. You're not really learning that much. You're learning things about club culture, which is a thing to learn about. But on the other hand, you just have so much potential to have your entire perception of the world utterly transformed if you really critically engage with where you are. Like if you're going to museums, if you're speaking to locals, if you're questioning the way that you live your life versus how this culture lives their lives. At least in my experience, that has utterly changed my brain chemistry. Being able to live in like Taipei or Buenos Aires, because I studied in 6 different countries. That's the biggest learning. Do it, but do it with intentionality. Volunteering. Okay, again, it really depends. I recently volunteered for 6 months in a primary school, helping kids who were struggling to read, improve their literacy skills. And it taught me a lot about the education system in the UK. It taught me a lot about child development. Like, I have no idea how much a 6-year-old can read versus how much an 8-year-old could read. Also, when I used to volunteer with a disability charity, I learned so much about the lived experience of people with disabilities, also how it can affect their families and what it's like to be a carer. And I think, yeah, it teaches you a lot about the world. But again, it depends where you volunteer and how you engage with it. So I'm gonna go Okeshi learning. Oh my god, guys, I just remembered an extra one that I didn't put in. Wait. Oh, how did I forget that one? Okay, guys, you just have to pretend that was there the whole time. You didn't see anything. Okay, we're down to the final 3. Vulnerable conversations. I wanted to throw in some more creative means of learning into here because I have learned so much about myself and the way that I move through the world in untraditional ways, right? Like having a difficult conversation with a friend or a lover, that's not how most people think about learning. They think about reading. But in those moments, you are practicing your understanding of nonviolent communication, from therapy, or your sense of self. You're proving you're doing work. You're proving you're learning. And I swear I have learned so incredibly much from relationships, from leaning into those difficult places where one of you is triggered and you want to end the relationship, but you choose not to, and you instead choose to be vulnerable. Like, God, that is the biggest learning in life. So I actually want to say vulnerable conversations. I'm going to say change my brain chemistry, because again, it depends. It's not necessarily casual magic. It depends how that conversation goes, depends how it's handled, but I do think it has, a lot of possibility to change your brain for the better and for the worse. Oh, failure. I wanted to put this one in here because, again, it's an untraditional means of learning. No one thinks, I want to graduate and go into the world and fail. But I actually think failure is casual magic, because failure is evidence of you trying, of you taking a risk, of you putting yourself in a difficult situation, a new situation, going outside of your comfort zone. And there's no place that you learn more than from failing and reflecting on why you failed. It's like how to guarantee future success. So I'm going to call failure casual magic. Please fail more, guys. Fail more. That is a beauty of learning outside of school, is that failure, God, that teaches you a lot. You don't need to get straight A stars anymore. And finally, peer-to-peer learning clubs. So this is everything from a book club to salsa classes to, any kind of class where you're around other people and you're all learning a new skill. To me, this has changed my brain chemistry, I think. I think peer-to-peer learning is just so fun. It's so fun to have the accountability to learn with other people. It obviously depends where you're doing it and how good the teacher is and how good the peers are. But I've learned so much more from reading a book in a book club than I have from just reading a book alone. I've learned so much about myself from going to bachata classes and having personal trainer classes in the gym and learning about health and my body. Go join more clubs, they teach you a lot. Okay, the final results. Oh, I'm looking at it now, and just so many of them are debatable, but I'm happy with it. And interestingly, I've put so many of them higher than I thought I would. So many of them are actually casual magic, changing my brain chemistry, and there's very few which are just better than nothing. So I think the takeaway there is that we're actually learning a lot in adulthood. We're learning a lot, even if we don't feel like we are. Even though we're not getting grades, even though we're not writing essays, there is so much richness in our day-to-day adult lives. It's just maybe we have not been taught to recognize the value of this type of learning. Having vulnerable conversations, Damn, what a way to learn. Failure, what a way to learn. I really hope this video inspires you to see that all your forms of learning are better than nothing. You don't need to learn the equivalent of a degree all the time. You are learning every single day of your life, but the thing that you can do to enhance your learning is intentionality. It's this mindfulness piece, this reflection piece. It's consuming content, but also taking the time, space, and silence to question how it's affecting you, to revisit content, and to let it change your brain chemistry and your life. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, it feels so wonderful and nostalgic to make another study video in this phase of my life. I know that I'll be back in formal education at some point. I want to do a master's, potentially a PhD. But I'm very much enjoying navigating adulthood right now. I'm sending you so much love, as always, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on my rankings. Come debate me. I'm ready. I'm not ready, but it's fine. That's called the internet. And if you made it this far in the video, give me a little like. Love you. Bye.